fanfare?
Motorcycles pulling up.
I'm going to take a couple of minutes before we actually start, just to talk about a few things. It's unfortunate that we don't have a better turnout than we do, but there was a competing event this evening which was not scheduled at the time we scheduled this. In addition, we're in a religious week that calls a number of people to be doing other things. But in any event, this is a kickoff for us for the campaign season. And you'll notice that we have gotten up a list of questions. By no stretch of the imagination is it expected that these questions are going to be answered by the candidates in one night. Hopefully, they'll address most of these issues over the course of the coming campaign. Our intent, as indicated in the questions, is that there should in fact be a focus on real issues confronting Nassau County. That the county's in a bind, everybody agrees it's in a bind, but nobody. And I think in fairness, if we, Democrats, I think have an obligation and have a history of reaching out to the other side, I think. And in doing so, we have to be prepared to talk to them. And if they're not going to talk to us, well then we're going to make an issue of it. But both sides have to start putting proposals on the table for addressing some of the monumental issues that are confronting us. And these questions are a start in that direction. We're going to circulate these questions widely, not just within Rockville Center. They're up on our website. They've been provided to a number of people and the press throughout Nassau County. And hopefully as we go along, we'll refine this in ways that will make these questions even more helpful in getting at the issues, but even more important, at getting at some solutions. Second, what is important for this club is that we start building up our membership. This is a great place to meet in many respects, but it's come to symbolize to some extent the aging population of those who are active in politics at the local level, at our local level. And we have, by any standard, one of the most, if not the most active Democratic club in Nassau County. A number of the other clubs just have officers and don't have much in the way of activity. But we have to start getting young people interested in the local political issues. We have to start getting them to be members of the club. We need candidates for office who come from these young people. We have to have them come up with ideas as to how we can attract young people to remain in Nassau County and to come to Nassau County from elsewhere. In any event, in line with our efforts to start building up not just the club, but local democratic activism, we're making every effort we can to reach out to new people in the community, who move into the community, to people who have just recently registered to vote in the last several years. And Dell, where is Dell? Yeah, Adele has been doing yeoman labor in terms of organizing a whole effort to reach out to those people. And she really does need assistance in that regard. We're trying to parcel out maybe 30 people a month to each person. That's one call a day. I mean, you could do them all in an afternoon, or maybe even in an hour or two, to reach out to people who are registered Democrats or people who are not registered Democrats but aren't registered anything, who are, under the election law, blanks. We are welcoming these people to join our club, to become active in the activities of the Democratic Party here in Nassau County, etc. So if anybody here is prepared to give some assistance to Adele, I know she could use it. It shouldn't just be board members who are doing all of this. We need to have a truly grassroots Democratic club. So those are my few words. Any questions thus far? No, okay. I'm going to introduce Adam Haber. Adam, we're told, has been a very successful businessman. He's a member of the Rockville School Board, and he's had the guts over the course of the past year or two to decide that he's going to shoot for the top of Nassau County and run for county executive. That's a heavy burden, and under the circumstances where the past county executive also declared, should make for an interesting race. Somebody who effectively has been a long-term insider and somebody who has been an outsider, in fact. And hopefully that combination is going to be what is helpful in helping to crystallize those issues. So I'm not going to say much more because you didn't come to hear me, you came to hear these Adam. So Adam, go ahead.
Thank you, thank you. Henry, thanks for the invitation to come here and speak in Rockville Center, and everybody, thanks for coming out on a night tonight, beautiful night tonight, to hear me speak. I'm Adam Haber. I'm a Nassau County Executive Democratic hopeful, and I plan on winning. I love this place, and in the next 20 minutes, half hour, however long you want to have this dialogue, I'll stay here and speak afterwards and answer questions. I'm going to tell you who I am. I'm going to tell you what the problems are. I'm going to give you some solutions. And let this be a dialogue, so if in the middle of when I'm speaking somebody has a question about a particular issue, I'll be happy to answer any questions. So let's get right started into this. I grew up in upstate New York, really not upstate, but Spring Valley. Married a Long Island girl. The gravitational pull of the son and their mother and a Long Island girl is very, very strong, so that's why I'm here. And I grew up in a middle-class family. My mother is a teacher, my wife's a teacher. My brothers are both in education, so I think one of the reasons that drew me to Long Island was the quality of the public education here. Even our worst districts in Long Island are better than the best districts in California and in Florida. And what I am, first and foremost, is a very strong advocate of the school board system, and I believe that's why we suffer through paying high taxes. But I'll get into the high taxes later and what some of that really means and how we have some solutions to that. I started very active in the community at a relatively young age. In 2004, I joined a charity called All Hands Volunteers, and I went down to Biloxi, Mississippi, and helped rebuild schools and churches down there. I then went to Iowa in 2008. I went to Haiti in 2011, and I'm a board member, a board advisor of that charity now, and I brought them to Long Island after Superstorm Sandy. They're actually on the South Shore now. And if anybody knows anybody who still needs free mold remediation or rip out, this charity literally goes into homes, rips out the sheetrock, rips out the mold, and gives subfloor building. We just got a $750,000 grant from the Rockville Foundation. We're going to be here through August. But I'll get into later some of the issues we had of even trying to give free services out. As far as community goes, when the storm happened, I had the experience through this charity to run 4 separate trucks down to the South Shore, giving food, water, clothes, supplies, school instruments and school supplies to Long Beach, shoes and socks to Freeport, food, water, and clothing to the Rockville Center, and I also got 800 space heaters delivered throughout the South Shore. So I know how to deal with situations where there's an emergency. I have some background in that, and that's one of the things I bring here is emergency management. But as far as community goes, I'm also involved in the Rollins School Board. I got involved because our superintendent stole $11.2 million.
Oh, yes, I remember that.
You know, probably more. and that really was devastating because I moved to Roslyn because I did a lot of research. It was supposed to be the best and the brightest, and it turned out not only was the school failing with this money being stolen, but there were garbage pails in the hallways, the roof was leaking, and when I got on the Budget Advisory Committee first in 2007, I realized that I had a lot of value to offer. So then I ended up joining the school board, and I brought a business perspective to the school board. In my mind, I don't know what the best thing to teach is in education. That's not my job. My job is the business of education. It's a $100 million budget with 600 employees. And I created a PowerPoint presentation that I actually gave at the School Boards Association meeting in Rochester about how to save money. And I'll give you a couple quick things I did that translated into things that we can do in the county. The first thing I did when I showed up is I refinanced our debt. They had 4.5% debt on the books, and they thought that it was as low as possible. But lo and behold, because I was in the capital markets when I was in business, I realized that 2% is what the going rate was for debt for a government agency, and we saved about $2 million refinancing the debt. Another thing I did was intermunicipal busing. Never before had a school district gone to another district on the way to an out-of-district school and picked up kids along the way. And there's no reason why there's 10 districts in Nassau County that have their own buses out of 56 districts. If we go through from Roslyn, go through Mineola, go through Rockville Center on the way to Long Beach, why can't we pick up kids along the way? And that was a 1.5-year process, and we just started it last year with 6 kids. We generated $100,000 for the schools, and we saved $100,000 for the schools that we picked up the kids because we split the cost instead of paying an outside provider. Another interesting thing we did was, this is a good story, so I'll lead it to something else. I looked at all of our assets in Roslyn schools, and I don't want to fire a teacher, and I don't want to raise taxes. All right, those are the two things that most people who don't know how to operate business do. They looked at the easy things. Let's just cut some wages, or let's cut employees, or let's raise taxes. That's the last thing I want to do. I want to manage the infrastructure of the schools as great as possible. So I saw that we were getting $2,000 from Cablevision, MSG Varsity, for the rights to broadcast our sports. And people said, great, we got a couple $1,000s. Well, if you look at it from a distance, there's 125 school districts on Long Island, and there's $2,000 a district. There's $250,000 Cablevision retains viewership of viewers. They cross-sell services, and they advertise. Now, I know a little bit about the broadcasting business in PR, and I know that it's worth a lot more, especially when I read a little snippet in the paper that in 2010, the Big East, which is a basketball division, which is now disbanded, was offered $130 million to broadcast their broadcast rights. They're a revenue stream, and that's a sick amount of money. So I went to all the superintendents in the schools, and I said, guys, we should go out for an RFP, we should get FiOS involved, maybe Dish Network, and we should manage our assets and try and generate the revenue from this that we're not. No one cared, and I knew it was worth more. So I called Harvard. I found 2 bright guys in the graduate program, and I said, guys, conduct a study for me. I own a couple of restaurants, I'll pay you dinner. You guys gotta eat, and you want to build a resume, and I want to study, and they agreed. One of the guys worked for the NBA, one of the guys worked at NBC. Study comes back, broadcast rights are worth $80,000 a school district, not 2. All right, so I ended up going back to the superintendents of schools. They put out an RFP. Lo and behold, they get a lot of money for playoffs. They get $225,000 in playoffs. FiOS comes in with a bid for $8,000 per school. About $600,000 more in Nassau County in education because of this little study. One of the little things as far as education goes and my community service was the rooftops in all the schools are an asset. Right now there's a program through LIPA that you can rent out the rooftops to somebody who wants to put solar panels on your roofs. And we're in the middle of negotiating something right now where we're going to get about $250,000 a year for 20 years. That's 2.5 teachers a year. And again, I don't want to raise taxes, I don't want to fire teachers. Because in Roslyn, not only have we had one of the lowest budget-to-budget increases in the last 4 years, we haven't cut teachers, we haven't cut programs, and we're thriving. While a lot of school districts like Baldwin, I know Rockville Center has their issues, are really laying off because the 2% cap is not even covering the increases in health and pension benefits. So the whole thing, in my mind, is just looking as to where we could find assets and monetize them. And using our rooftops in Nassau County would generate $5 to $7 million a year. They just did it in Brookhaven, and they generated $2.5 million a year. There's money in some of our infrastructure that we're not monetizing and we're not doing as efficiently as possible, and that's what I bring. So my community service was, again, all hands volunteers. I'm on boards of a couple of charities. My wife's also very active. She's on the board of the local JCC. She's a social worker. I know from her a lot of the problems that are happening with social services, and we're very involved in the community. That's my community background, but my business background is what I think really adds value. For 22 years I was in finance. I had my own company. From there I was in commercial real estate. I know how to manage property very well. I represented a company in Oregon, in New York as the managing director for several years. From there I got into startups and venture capital, which I think are the key to success here in Nassau County. And from there I actually somehow got into the restaurant business. So I'm going to give you a shameless plug. I own a restaurant in Mineola called Lula. It's Small Plates Italian. Just opened up to a great review. And I own a Michelin-starred restaurant in New York City called Aldea, which is consistently voted one of the top 50 restaurants in New York City. So community service, married to a teacher, background in finance, restaurants, venture capital, real estate. I think I have a very good pedigree on how to manage money and how to help the community. So in 2009, I left the world of finance and I joined the school board and I had some free time. And I started going down to the legislative meetings. And for me, as a guy who loves learning how businesses operate, I couldn't believe I went through the budget and I couldn't believe some of the meetings. Now, I'm a Democrat and I usually think the Democrats are right. But what I couldn't believe was nothing was seeming to get done. If Republicans had an idea, the Democrats knocked it. If the Democrats had an idea, the Republicans knocked it. We watched so many things happen, and I'm going to give you a quick summary of the problems that I witnessed and the problems that are indicative of Nassau County, and I'm going to try and give you some solutions. So, first and foremost, we lost the Islanders. Now, I don't care if you don't like hockey, that was the heart and soul of Nassau County. For 12 years, we've tried to negotiate a contract to keep the Islanders here. And there was the Lighthouse Project, and then there was that joke of August 2011 vote that cost $2 million to the county. Now, I know a little bit about PR and polling. I don't know why Mangano didn't do a $15,000 poll to make sure that the thing was going to pass before we spent $2,000 of taxpayer money, but that's another story. So how would I have kept the Islanders? That's a question that people ask me all the time. Well, I wouldn't have used public money, but there's things you can do that I've learned through commercial real estate to build projects. And one of the projects I was involved with on the West Coast used something called TIF financing, tax increment financing, where you bond the future tax revenue of a project and you use that to build the project out. So the tax revenue is all dedicated to building this out, and the win would be all the jobs that would be created by a project. They do it in California all the time, and I was reading through some of the numbers of the hundreds of millions of dollars in tax revenue that was going to be created. They never had an opportunity to be created because the current county executive wanted to, borrow, have the taxes go up and pay for it. Besides TIF financing, we could have sold naming rights to the Coliseum. City Field, $20 million a year. They could have gotten at least $5 million for the naming rights for Nassau Coliseum. I would have given $1 million to the veterans because it was called Nassau Veterans Coliseum as a way to compensate them for the change in the name and give them much needed money, because I think how we treat veterans in this country is horrific, especially in this area. After I've gone to many meetings, they're not getting their just desserts, and that money could have been dedicated to them, and you would have had $4 million to pay it on debt. You could have had a $3 ticket surcharge on every ticket sold, so it would have almost been like a use tax. That would have been $3 million a year, because about 1 million people go through there after hockey and concerts. 1 million people circulate through the doors of the Coliseum every year with hockey and concerts and everything else. You could have had premium seating like they do on Broadway. So right, the Producers was the first show to do that, where instead of going to a scalper, they'd charge $400 for front row seats. There's always somebody who wants front row seats who's going to pay $400 for a $100 seat because they want to get it whenever they want. Millions of dollars could have been generated that way. So between TIF financing, selling broadcast, selling naming rights, a surcharge of $3, and premium seating, you didn't need to go to the taxpayer. You just needed to be creative to build that out. So that was the biggest mistake, and one of the big things I want to do is get a shovel in the ground in that project, because too long, nothing. In the last 12 years, if you think, what has been built in Nassau County? Or what major corporation has moved to Nassau County? And where is that growth coming from? And there hasn't been any victories in a long, long time. There's a guy who knows business, a guy who actually has been involved with companies overseas. I know that Japan, China, the Far East, South Asia, the European Union, all want to come here. And the way to get them here is to go, not and wait and see where they're coming, but go to the consulates and go to the chambers of commerce of the United States and New York City, which I've called already, and they'll walk you in before they even go to see anybody else. And that's what the IDA should be used for, is to come and entice a major corporation to come here and lay roots from overseas. That's the purpose of IDA money, which I don't know if all of you know is Industrial Development Agency. It is a way to stimulate business by using taxpayer money to stimulate, bring companies over here. It's not to give money to small mom and pops who could use an expansion in their company because they don't want to move. For example, there was a car dealership in Nassau County that was offered an IDA, and it was in my school district, and I helped block the process because a car dealership isn't going to move somewhere else. They have a territory. There's no purpose of giving a car dealership an IDA. It's the Industrial Development Agency. You bring a large corporation here, let's see a car manufacturer, and then a whole bunch of companies surround them. The car manufacturer needs batteries, they need radios, they need tires, they need services. That's how economies thrive by bringing in and landing a big fish. And I think I'm quite capable of doing that because I speak that language. Another problem is police precincts. All right, the Democrats did not want to merge the police precincts from 8 to 4. Mangano came out with a plan that said, we're going to save $20 million. We're going to go to 4 police precincts. Well, there's been no sound bites or news out lately about how much money he saved because he hasn't combined all the police precincts, and it's been an opaque and chaotic combining of precincts that I get calls from the police all the time saying, not only is it not working, we're working out of trailers and it's not saving money, it's costing us more because they didn't build it out ahead of time and didn't think it through. So I'd like to see 8 precincts again. That's a pretty big issue. The biggest issue we have in Nassau County, all right, we can talk about all the problems we have. The biggest issue we have, and I'm sure Dave will agree with this, is tax certiorari. All right, we are bonding $100 million a year to pay tax refunds to commercial and real estate property. Now, no county executive in the history of Nassau has come up with a solution on how to fix this. I've been working with the top tax cert lawyers in the country. I'm not going to give you my whole plan now, but I have a solution. But it deals with, very quickly, taking the time it takes to put a claim in. Right now it's a 15-month window, which goes through 2 fiscal years. Tightening that window and beefing up the assessor's office. Ed Mangano said, I'm going to cut government. So we went from 43 assessors and almost a $4 million budget to 28 assessors and under a $2 million budget. The only problem is nobody's here to assess the property. He thought he was able to push it onto the school districts. What a nightmare. He's not fixing the problem, he's just pushing the problem onto somebody else. And there's 56 school districts, so each individual school district would have to hire their own infrastructure to deal with the tax certs. So not only would the refunds be the same, but there'd be more government and more expensive government, and we figured out it'd be about $30 million a year in additional government on top of the refunds. Now, there's been bonding nonstop since Galata. We've bonded billions of dollars. Nassau County has the highest debt of any county in New York State. There's 62 counties, but let's exclude New York City. There's 57 counties. We have the highest debt by over 200% of any county in Nassau, and the highest taxes by 20%, yet we're one of the wealthiest counties in the country. How is that possible? It's because every year the can gets kicked down the road, and they don't fix the problem. And what ends up happening is every legislator says we should do tax refunds, but there's no solutions to fix the problems. I'm going to come out with a solution. But the one big thing about tax certiorari is we've got to beef that system up. We've got to invest probably $3 to $5 million more. I know this is one of your questions about how to fix the system, which is probably about 35 to 40 employees. And we've got to use technology like they do in the real world to figure out the assessments. Because if you learn nothing else tonight, Henry, if your house has $10,000 in taxes, and mine has $10,000 in taxes, and you put in for a tax cert, and they go down to 8, well, I'm going to be paying 12. So if you learn nothing else tonight, and you don't remember a single thing from this conversation, I want you to know that you should every single year put in for a tax certiorari, a tax claim. You can do it yourself online. And if you don't do it, you're going to pay for somebody else's tax certiorari claim, because Mangano has over 100,000 claims now because everybody's flooding the system. So last year he gave almost everybody a full claim, whether he deserved it or not. He said, look, I fixed it. Everybody got a claim. I didn't need to use any people. But the people who were ill-informed ended up paying for that. So that's a huge problem. We need to fix that system. I'll have a plan for it, and I gave you a little teaser with beefing it up with more employees and shortening the length of the time. Sewage treatment plants, I know Dave's very involved in this. The money was not put into keeping those plants up to speed. $100 million in repairs needed before the storm, give or take. Now we have a huge storm, it floods the system. $1 billion. $1 billion is needed to fix that system. Where's that money coming from? And on top of it, there's $400 million in tax cert money that's owed back to commercial property owners. At the end of this year, it'll probably be over $400 million. The government doesn't recognize that money, and they say, look, we have a balanced budget, we even have a surplus. But I don't know about you, if I owe $400 million, I look at that as a debt or a liability of my organization, and that money needs to be paid back. And it's going to be either bonded or paid back over several years, but that's money coming out of our budget. And because there's so much debt in Nassau County right now, we're closer to junk bond status than we are to AAA rating. And as we bond more and more and more, it costs us more and more to pay for this debt. 15 cents of every dollar in Nassau County goes to pay down debt service. The next closest county in the New York metro area is 7%. That 8% represents about $170 million that we're not paying for services that we deserve. I mean, the purpose of government is the safety and welfare of this community. I love this place. The middle class is bearing the brunt of this. It's shrinking. People are leaving. We haven't had a business come here. How are my kids and your kids or grandkids going to move back here and make this place grow? There hasn't been a plan, yet we go from one disaster to another, constantly lurching without a long-term plan. And I'm going to get to some of the answers in a moment. One thing that's not even discussed, we have Superfund sites on Long Island. The groundwater is being destroyed. That's our greatest resource. We have groundwater for hundreds of years, but somehow there's toxic sludge coming from Grumman, coming from a Verizon site by the movie theaters in Westbury that's got nuclear waste in it. There's 7 active Superfund sites in Nassau County that no one's even talking about. A county executive should be smashing his shoe on a table like Khrushchev did during the Cold War and saying, we want the money, we want the Superfund sites cleaned up. That's just not happening. Personally, I think the response to Hurricane Sandy was abysmal. It's great that the county executive ran around saying how great a job he was on TV, but guess what? I didn't have power. We didn't have TV. We had AM radio. Our cell phones weren't working. There wasn't a plan where you knew where to go for information and where do I go? And now that there's this redistricting is happening, there was one county legislator in my district, Wayne Wink. Now there's 4. So where are you going to know to go to get information? Where do you go if there's a storm tomorrow? Nobody has a plan. It's lurching from problem to problem to problem. 2 more issues that are a big deal. I'm actually going to give you one more issue that's a big deal, and then we're going to get into some solutions. Is the red light cameras that we have, that was put there for social services, plain and simple. Social services are the youth and social services are the after-school programs, recovering alcoholics, teen pregnancy, suicide hotline. The people, as Democrats, we help the lowest who need the help, the people who can't help themselves. And they took this money, the county executive said, even though this money was dedicated by the state and the social service agencies went up to Albany to beg for this money, he put it into the general fund and said, go fend for yourselves. So instead of keeping a kid in an after-school program and spending $200, you'll pay $50,000, $60,000 a year to keep them in jail. It's an investment, and I'd love to get that kind of return on my investment. It's $200 invested in the youth as opposed to paying for $60,000 in jail. So I kind of probably bummed you out about all the things that are going wrong here, and I know I'm going to try to lift your spirits a little bit because I love this place. This place has got unbelievable bones. It's got beaches in the South Shore. It's got wine country. I'm thinking about regionally, and not just Nassau County, but Long Island. Why we live in this area? You got the Hamptons. You got wine country. You got the best schools in the country. You got the city right here. You got all the museums and parks on the North Shore, and even the South Shore. Why isn't there somebody leveraging those assets and saying, come to Nassau County, a tourism board, saying, look what we've got. And why aren't you coming here? Why isn't there somebody preaching from the highest rafters saying this place is great? I think Nassau County is an easy sell. I think it's an easy sell. People want to be around great theater, around great sports, around, well, the Islanders are gone, but around good sports. They want to be around stuff where they can have a high quality of life. That's where we live here. All right? Now, getting back to the high taxes, I want you to know that nobody's advocating for Long Island right now because we send $4 billion back to New York State. The region of Long Island pays for the rest of the state of New York. There's 2.8 million people in Long Island. There's almost 20 million in New York State. Our schools, only on